Hey everyone, welcome to the Sunday night Indigenous Sex and Love show. I'm Ashley Callingbull and these are my two great co-hosts.
I'm Edward Sear.
And I'm Lavallee. So this episode is about self-love and self-esteem. And we're featuring Ashley today. In case some of you don't know who Ashley is, she won Mrs. Universe back in 2015. She's the first Canadian and First Nation woman to ever receive this honor. She's been featured on shows like The Amazing Race Canada. She's currently connected to different modeling agencies right now, but most importantly, Ashley is an advocate for our people and especially our Indigenous youth.
Absolutely. And so that's how we got in touch actually with Ashley Callingbull. Ashley Callingbull has supported our Resilient and Relentless clothing line, which for those of you who may or may not know, all the proceeds go towards creating employment opportunities and social programs for Indigenous youth. And she has shared pictures with that, and our sales increased after that. And then she's also supported us with our social media projects as well by just being involved in that. And I asked Ashley to be a part of the Sunday Night Indigenous Sex and Love show, and she has humbly agreed.
Yes.
So we are so grateful to have you today. Thank you so much, Ashley. And so the first question that we have for you is, what is self-love to you?
To me, well, when I explain to people, I think that self-love is, loving and appreciating yourself for the way that you were created.
Mm-hmm.
And, my beliefs is like, I always appreciate myself for the way the Creator made me because He made me this way for a reason. So, I appreciate my gifts and my flaws, everything that, comes with being myself.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, and, and being also Indigenous, that's something I'm really proud of. So I always take pride in, like, my culture and, the resiliency that runs through my culture, and that because of that I'm who I am. And I always remember that regardless of because of basically the industries that I'm in, I always try to make you who they want you to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I always make sure to always be the best version of myself, what I think is the best for me. And because of that, like, I love myself more and I feel stronger. So I don't try to be what everyone wants me to be. I'll always be myself, and I always appreciate the Creator for making me this way because, I'm the way I am for a reason.
Oh.
Yeah. Your best competition is with yourself is what I was always taught. It's always about being a better you every day.
Yeah, exactly.
And being who you are everywhere you go.
Yeah.
That's what I was taught as well. So our second question is, tell us about your upbringing and how that affected your self-esteem today.
Well, I actually grew up not in a very good upbringing. I lived through poverty and abuse, physical and sexual abuse for a long time. So I didn't have like a regular childhood. I didn't have those luxuries, and it was extremely difficult because it changed my self-esteem. It brought it down to a completely new low, and a lot of times I never wanted to be here anymore because I thought, why do I deserve this? Why do I deserve this to happen to me? And, it's a very common story with a lot of Native people, and that's why a lot of youth turn to suicide because of those things. But I think that, I try to think of the positive. I think the one thing I needed to do in order to move forward with my life was to be able to let go of the pain and to be able to focus on the future and focus on bettering myself and thinking, what ways can I heal myself from those tragedies and from that extreme trauma that I went through. And that's why I do the work that I do, is because, helping others heal is also like a form of therapy for me, helping me heal. So, but that lifestyle definitely made me stronger. It made me more resilient. It made me realize like what I'm made of and what I can live through. And I don't regret it. And a lot of people ask me that. They're like, do you regret living through something like that? Do you wish you could have had a better childhood? And I'm like, no, because, it shaped me into the woman I am today. All, the sacrifices that I made, the struggles that I've overcome, I wouldn't be as strong as I am today. So my upbringing definitely made me more humble and thankful for life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so who were some important role models that you looked up to growing up, and how did they help with your self-esteem?
Well, it was definitely the people that were closest to me. So my mother and my grandmother and my grandfather, my kukum and my mushum. They're very spiritual and cultural people. And my mom, she's the definition of what a strong woman is.
Right.
She lived through everything that I've lived through. We were in it together. And I felt like, she was someone I always wanted to impress, always someone I wanted to make proud. She lived her life to give me the best of what she could, and so every day I try to, be a good daughter for her and try to make her proud and make her smile. So I want to be as strong as her, but I also want to be as culturally in tune as my grandparents, because, they were a medicine man and medicine woman. My grandmother has passed, but my mushroom is still here with us, and he taught me the importance of who I am and identity, and that's something that no one can take away from me. So those were like the people that definitely shaped me into who I am, but they taught me, how to live my life in a happy and positive way, and because of them, I probably wouldn't be like this.
Right.
Yeah. So that actually kind of brings us to the next question. How does like your cultural background and your traditional self, like how does that play a role in your self-esteem? Play a part?
A huge part. So, when I came back from living in that lifestyle that I had, my curriculum told me my grandmother, she told me to stay away from drugs and alcohol. A lot of people that go through trauma like that, they want to turn to something that's going to numb the pain. And the one important thing my curriculum told me was that, in order to feel connected to who I am, I need to stay away from those things, because the more you put those negative things in your body, the further and further your spirit gets from you, and then that's why you get lost, and then that's where you make bad decisions. So because of that, her leading by example and living on the Red Road and going into Sweat Lodge and going into ceremonies, and I realized like that's where I found my strength, and that's where I found my form of healing, was like my identity. And because of, having that cultural influence and being able to have that, at home, it made me realize, like this is who I am, like no one can take this away from me, and this is where I get my strength from, and this is what's going to keep me going in the right direction. And I feel that culture has played a huge role in my life, because if I didn't have that, I would probably feel lost. I probably wouldn't know who I am, and I probably would have turned into the negative side of things instead of trying to, change my life around for the positive. So culture definitely saved my life, ultimately.
And I love that you bring that up, Ashley, because when we talk about residential schools and colonization, essentially there was so much shame passed on to into Indigenous people about who we are and where we came from. And so when we see, especially our young people, being really proud of themselves, it's so symbolic for being resilient and being relentless and continuing to move forward past any barriers or obstacles. And it's so inspiring when we have Indigenous people like yourself doing that great work. Now we have a lot of young viewers watching who may be in high school, and so we want to know, what was high school like for Ashley Callingbull? Were you always super popular? Like, what was your character? We'd like to know a little bit about what Ashley Callingbull was like in high school.
It was not cool whatsoever, not according to other people. I was pretty lonerish, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it was hard. It was a hard transition going from the reserve to a high school in the city. And that's like one of the really big problems, a lot of people face that. And I remember, there was only 5 kids that graduated from my school in the reserve, and we were all related. And then I went to a school where I think I was the only native in my entire school. And when I got into there, I was like, I have nobody to relate to. It was hard because, the city, it was just a big transition. And, at first I was nervous and scared because I was pretty lonerish. At my first day of school was embarrassing, like extremely embarrassing. Lots of things happened. But then, I found like what my niche was, and it was acting. So I like really pushed myself into the drama programs, and then I did like after school drama, and then I did all the media classes, and like would make my own films and everything. I realized, these are the kind of people I want to be hanging out with, people that are like really artistic like me. And I started to, like it after a bit, but I don't really know many people that really loved high school. I was just happy to get out of there because
I didn't either.
I loved high school, and I was also always in drama club as well. That was one of my dreams too.
I was just too young, I think, because I skipped 2 grades. So when I got into high school in grade 10, I was 13, and I was like still playing with Barbies, and everyone's like thinking about boyfriends. So I was 16 when I graduated, so I was just always like the young pup.
So let's pump the brakes. So you graduated high school at 16 years old.
Yeah.
Because they skipped you 2 grades because your IQ.
I guess.
You're super
You're like
intelligent.
academically ahead.
I guess so,
Academically
yeah.
inclined, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
awesome. So that kind of brings us to our next question too, like since we're on the topic of high school, but what advice would you give for young Indigenous girls in high school?
I think that the most important thing, like for any girl, they don't have to be Indigenous, is that they shouldn't worry about what other people think. And I
Yeah.
think that's like a big thing
Huge
in high school.
issue, yeah.
You know, like everyone cares about like what's popular, who's the prettiest, or you know, other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And I like I was mentioning to you earlier, like when we were talking off camera, I was saying that you know, nobody's opinion is more important than your own. Like how you feel about yourself is like how you should feel. Like if someone says something about you, you shouldn't care. You know, it's only about how you really feel. And I think that a lot of young girls worry about like having to impress people or having to impress boys. What's cool?
Oh, yeah.
So they put, you know, their future at stake, or they limit themselves because they try to live up to someone else's standards
Yeah.
or be someone else's type of beautiful. There's all these things that girls feel like they need to live up to, or like settle themselves down. You know what I mean? And I think that like girls just really need to realize they need to love themselves for how they are. And I think that they shouldn't limit themselves or be afraid, because a lot of women, you know, I feel like we're underrepresented in so many different fields. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of women think that, you know, we can't do as much as men can, but we could probably do more and better and better. So I mean, like, you know, women should always be fearless and like live life without limits, and always have that idea like for school, why not? Why can't I do it? You know, have that why not mentality and think that, you know, I can succeed at anything I want to succeed, and they shouldn't listen to what anyone else has to say. It's only if they really feel like they believe they can do it, then they can.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. You go, girls, do your thing.
And men too, y'all can do things too. But
yeah, you boys can do stuff.
Right, we can do stuff. But you know what? One of my teachings, and one of the elders that I was working with, she always used to say to me, you know what? Men, they can take life, but women could give life and take life. So better watch out, guys. Gotta be careful. Make sure that we respect our Indigenous women.
Yes.
And which brings me to one of our next questions. Did drugs and alcohol play a role in your upbringing? And I love that, you know, I just want to teeter on to, if you've watched Blackstone, your story is remarkably similar to the character you played in that your relationship with your grandparents, your strong connection to your culture and traditional. And how did drugs and alcohol play a role in your life, if not for you, for your community and surrounding friends and family, and how did that impact their self-esteem?
You know, it's a huge problem, huge addiction, and it's in my community. It's almost in every reserve in Canada. I don't know anyone there are no communities that don't have that type of problem. But, you know, for me, like what I said earlier about my grandmother, she told me, you know, stay away, and I'd find happiness away from it, and I did. But for my friends who were going down, you know, have been through similar situations, like with the abuse, a lot of them did turn to drugs and alcohol, and a lot of them turned to suicide. And you know, I would see their lives just spiral downwards and they would never go up. And that's not what I wanted for myself. I wanted so badly to, like, prove that I am worth something, because people would always tell me growing up that I was worthless and I would never be anything. And I felt like I wanted to prove to myself that, you know, like, I can be somebody. So I wanted to stay away from the negativities. But my friends and my cousins who went through similar situations, I saw them giving their lives up, and I didn't want to give up on myself. And I think that's like a big problem with the youth, is that they think they have nothing else to live for, and there's nothing better coming. But when I work with them and I travel everywhere, you know, I always want to give them that sense of hope, because it is there. There's that hope for change, and there's that hope for a positive future. And for me, I just stay away. But you know, people that are still overcoming it, it's a terrible addiction. Absolutely. But it stems from a bigger problem. It's not something that we just get into. A lot of people don't understand, like, it's intergenerational trauma. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm so glad you bring that up, Ashley, because a lot of people think, oh, they're just an addict, and I'm so glad someone like you can see that there's something underneath the addiction.
You know, like, what happened to me was exactly what intergenerational trauma is. You know, my abuser was abused, and it just passed on, and then a lot of people, you know, they turn to these addictions to numb themselves from the pain and to forget. and it's not healthy. And we feel like, you know, a lot of our people felt like they really lost themselves because they were trying to, you know, kill our culture and kill who we were inside. And that's when I work with the youth, it's just sad to see that, you know, so many are going through that, you know, and so many are trying to heal, but it's a huge problem. And, you know, I wish that our people didn't have to suffer so much, and we weren't pushed to those, you know, to make those decisions for ourselves and to give up. But that's the one thing I always tell the youth is to, you know, to never give up. There's so much to live for, you know, and I realized that by, you know, turning to my culture. There's so much to live for. But when I was living in those conditions, I thought there was nothing to live for. I wanted to give up, but I didn't, because I didn't want to leave my mom alone, and I didn't want to, you know, give up on what future I could have. I had that hope inside me, thinking that I can go somewhere. I can be somebody. So, you know, I don't encourage people to do those things whatsoever.
Okay, so the next question, it's kind of a lighter question. Thanks for that input, though. What you just your input just
I know,
now.
right to the soul, right?
It really moved me just now, because I see it, like, I work for bail program. I see it in my clients, like, they have alcohol and drug addictions, and it's all from, like, the displacement and the history of our people. But then they just think, you know, like what Edward was saying, I'm just an addict or I'm just an alcoholic. But it's bigger than them.
It's
like,
bigger than the stereotype people put on us.
Well, and I think you really touched upon it too, Ashley, and that's planting that seed of hope and faith. As long as there's a seed there and you water it and give it sunshine, it will grow. And I think, and I want to say that even the show and the clothing line is really a testament of the possibilities. Like I shared with Ashley the other night when I was speaking that this time last year I was actually in a drug and alcohol rehabilitation program. I don't talk about it too often, but this year now we have a clothing line that's done really well. I'm sitting down beside Ashley Callingbull, and so if you're watching this, great things come if you're willing to make the sacrifices and the changes. And the one thing that I had lost last year when I was in rehab was my faith. And so if you just have a little bit of faith, it can go such a long way. And so I'm really glad that you talked about that faith inside and that belief inside you. It's so important for our people. So don't give up on yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for people who aren't caught up in like drugs and alcohol, for our family members and our friends and loved ones who are, it's our responsibility to pull them back to that lifeline. Like when we get that teaching about the feather and the lifeline going through it, and people's lives end up, their lives end prematurely because they go off the lifeline. It's our responsibility to pull them back and give them that encouragement and hope and tell them that we love them and we don't want them to go through these things. So I just want to share that teaching with everybody. But this one's a lighter question. It was, what advice would you give for someone going through a breakup?
Hey, that breakup question. And there must be a lot of viewers out there who've gone through a breakup. They're the worst, aren't they?
I've been through my share of breakups. I don't dwell on the past. I know that there's plenty of fish in the sea.
Hey! There's plenty of fish in the sea.
You know, I always know that, you know, if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. You don't dwell on it, you know. Like, it's just the same thing in acting. If it wasn't right for me, it wasn't right for me. I'm not going to dwell on it. But, you know, if it's something, like, really serious, like a really serious breakup, you've been with someone for a long time, sometimes some people handle it like a death, like a mourning.
It's soul crushing.
I think it is mourning,
yeah, it is like a mourning. But you know, you take that time, and I think you need that time by yourself for a while to just rediscover yourself, what it's like to be on your own, find that strength, and not have to, rebound and rely on someone else right away.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's always important to see what you're made of when you're by yourself, and you know, hang out with your friends, stay busy. You know. Don't mope around and, you know, think about that person, because I know some things, you know, when you go through a breakup, you're like, I think of the good times.
Right.
Rose-colored glasses.
You're like, oh my God, those good times, or, but he did this. But it's like, no, if it was a bad breakup, you think of the bad things. And you try to move on. You're like, you think of, because when you're with someone, you want to be with someone who brings out the best in you. And if they made you feel that terrible, then they weren't worth it, you know? So I don't dwell.
Okay, so we're gonna jump a little bit more personal with Ashley Callingbull because we want to know, Ashley, what was your worst ever date and what was your best date?
I've been on some pretty bad dates. I think the worst date I was on.
Poor guy's gonna be watching it like, oh.
God, I'm not gonna say. Actually, he's kind of like really well known.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna say his name because he's kind of like a celeb, I guess. But
Wait, this is your worst date?
Yes.
And he's a celeb? You
Oh,
gotta
gosh.
spill the tea.
So I thought it was gonna be awesome because he was really chill on everything beforehand. But then when we went on the date, he just completely like changed, and he was trying to name drop the whole time. It was like he was trying to impress me, and it was just the most annoying thing I've ever heard. I was just like, you know what, you were like so cool until you tried to act like you were cool.
Right.
And it was annoying. He did that the whole night, and I was.
Did he
just,
drop my name?
Yeah.
That's how I found you.
Right.
But no, like I was just like, it was just the most annoying thing, and he was like, oh, I'm gonna buy this and this and this for dinner, and I'm like, pretty chill, like I like chicken fingers and fries and gravy.
Yeah.
Oh, chicken fingers.
So it was
Right.
like I went to this like restaurant. It was like that little weird food, and it was just like it was the worst time. And he kept trying to make the date go on, and I was just like, you know, I don't really like you at all. Don't like you. But my best date, I don't know. I've been on some really good dates.
You've been on some really bad ones and some really good ones.
But I've been on some really epic dates. But sometimes it's not even how epic it is; it's who you're with. And I think that's what makes the date so good. Like, I think when you're with someone that just makes you laugh and comfortable, and sometimes you don't even have to be doing anything exciting. Yeah. Like,
if there's just a connection there, right?
Yeah, like, my boyfriend, like, we don't even have to be doing anything. We just like hang out, and we're having the best time, and we just laugh so much, and it's the best. And it doesn't matter if you like go somewhere fancy or you see something you've never seen before. It's who you're with. That's what makes the date completely different.
Agreed completely.
Yeah.
Agreed completely.
And you know what? I was always told like long-lasting relationships, like the key to them is making each other laugh.
Yeah.
That's why
It's very true. I feel like that's
Laughter
the most
is
important thing.
Such a great medicine.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next question brings us to something a little bit more serious. So, what can our men do to help build our Indigenous women's self-esteem?
I think our men need to respect our women more.
Yeah.
Respect is the biggest thing. I feel like a lot of them don't respect us, or I think a lot of it has to do with the healing, right?
For
Like
sure.
a lot of healing has to start within the community, and I think that when that healing starts and we'll start respecting our women more, I don't think they realize like how hard it is to be an Indigenous woman in today's age, and having to live with like, you know, the threat of, you know, the whole MMIW, and then knowing that, you know, we're the caregivers, we're the ones who are bringing life into this world, we're the ones that are making change, we're the strong mothers and sisters, and I think that a lot of men like underestimate us, and they also don't respect that, and I think that they need to also respect our bodies too, because, you know, we live in a day and age where if you go on social media, you see girls flashing and everything, but that doesn't mean it's okay for you to treat us like, you know, we're a piece of meat.
Yeah.
You know, that is something I don't appreciate. So I learning to respect and understand a woman's wishes, and, you know, she says no, that's a no. Yeah.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And I want to talk a little bit too about our Indigenous men and about our trauma and our hurt a little bit as well. And what can Indigenous women do to also support Indigenous men in our self-esteem? Because there's a lot of hurt from Indigenous men, especially with how society has come, where there's so much emphasis placed on money and things that are toxic masculinity. So things like money and violence and unfortunately the over-sexualization of women is glorified and validated by other men. And so what can Indigenous women do to support Indigenous men so that we can also be a part of that healing process? Is there something that our Indigenous women can do to support us on that?
Well, I think it's all like respect too, but you know, a lot of men think that, you know, some women are just against them. Like, say the Me Too movement, for example. A lot of men are like, oh, they're, you know, women are just coming after us, making accusations. But no, we're just standing up for ourselves. But I think that, you know, some women, you know, we could be more sensitive to men. Like, men are actually pretty sensitive.
We are
You, like,
super sensitive.
maybe more sensitive than women. But,
I think so.
but you know,
I think
that's
so
what I
too.
think. I think that they get, you know, a woman will say something and it won't hit a man till later, and then it will really like explode in his brain.
What did you mean by that?
Women say crazy things, you know what I mean? But like, women could definitely be more sensitive and understanding, especially like men coming from, you know, bad places, or men, you know, they're trying to heal. You know, we could all definitely, you know, give more to each other. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It's that healing, you know.
Sure.
I think it's a lot of giving instead of like taking or expecting. You can't like expect someone to be the best person ever, you know. If you want to better someone, you help them and you take that time to heal. But if it's someone that's unhealthy and toxic for you, then, you know, you shouldn't be putting your heart out there. But if you're trying to help our men, you know, it is all about respect and understanding and taking your time. And it's like that with women too.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate too, because when we talk, and I, you know, just as a man myself, just seeing how society conditions men so early to not talk about our feelings, and in every movie that's out there, the superhero is this big buff guy who beats the villain up at the end of the movie and gets the pretty girl, and so our little boys are watching that, and that's what they think is going to attract women, and so it's always interesting to see the other side of that coin, right?
Yeah, I think that also that women, we have the power to educate men on, you know, exactly what we're saying and feeling. But you know, a lot of times I expect my boyfriend to read my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I didn't want to say it.
I'm like, just read my mind already. You know what I mean? But sometimes I just have to go out and say it. You know, help him out a little bit. Men can't read minds.
And you know what? I'm so glad you said that, Ashley, because in all of our videos we talk about communication
is key.
Is such an important part of relationships.
Even friendships.
Even friendships. Like, you know what? Even friendships, because, you know, that is like, oftentimes when I was in my ex-girlfriend would say to me, why do I need to tell you to do that? You should just know to do that. And I'll just, and I, you know, and the hamster's running on my wheel, like, and I was like,
you know what? Men are way more like simple.
Yeah.
Like women overthink things, and we go like way further than we need to, and we're just like past a certain point. But a man hasn't even like thought that yet. And I'm just maybe I should just tell you.
Just like, if you just tell me, I would have did the dishes. And she's like, I shouldn't have to tell you to do the dishes. They're dirty for 2 days. They're all yours. I'm like, oh.
I feel bad for you guys.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Okay. The next question. Is it me or is it you, Edward? No, it's me. Okay. So, you kind of talked about this already. But if you want to add anything more to it, where do you get your confidence from?
Confidence, I guess I get it from different places. When I work with the youth, I get confidence from them.
Oh, they're so crazy. Inspiring, aren't they?
You know, when people ask, like, you know, what inspires you? You know, like, especially if it's kids, I'm like, well, you guys do. You keep inspiring me to do all these things that I'm doing.
Aww.
But then I get confidence also from my mom. I mean, my mom is a fighter. She is so resilient.
Mine too.
She is basically the definition of resilient and relentless, because she
You gotta get her a sweater.
Yes, she's lived through everything that I've lived through, but she's also like 2-time cancer survivor.
Wow.
And she was supposed to be paraplegic. There's all these things that she's overcome, and then also losing like my sister. Like, I'm surprised she's still doing like all the amazing things that she's doing, and she's also like a role model and a hero to people doing all those things. And like, I get my confidence from her, because I'm like, if she can do it and rock it and like live this best life and always have this smile on her face and live her life for other people, I'm like, I can do it too. You know, my mom is like a real hero to me.
I just want to take a moment to say I love my mom too, and Laura, like, I really
Edward also loves my mom.
I love your mom too. I do love
Jenny
your mom.
Diabololia, aka Jenny Lavallee, shout out to you.
Shout out, Mom, Diane Sear. I love you to death.
Shout out to my mom, Lisa Ground. I love you so much.
Shout out to all the moms. All, you know,
all
especially.
your moms are the best.
Yeah.
And the single moms too. We love you the most. You're doing great things. Don't give up on yourself. Interesting, Lauren. What's your fit? Let's get Lauren on this. What do you think your love
She's
language
like
is?
physical.
Edward knows me real well. That's why he's laughing. No, I'm
No,
acts
she's
of
not.
service.
You are acts of service.
Like, I'm like that with my friends. I'm like that with everybody. I will go out of my way with my actions to show like that I love people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say my second one is I'm big on giving gifts because like it makes me happy giving people gifts. Like
I like doing that too.
I get really excited like picking out gifts and seeing like birthdays,
response.
yeah,
Christmas.
seeing them like open a gift and like knowing that's exactly what they would want and like feeling accomplished and like I succeeded. And then I guess spending quality time. I need attention.
Yeah. So Lauren, let me quote Lauren. She comes into my office one day and she's like, I need attention. If I don't get it, I'm literally gonna die. I absolutely love Lauren for. I wish I could start. I wish I could start a book with Lauren Lavallee quotes. Like it would be a famous book. Which is really interesting too, because when I think about the 5 different love languages, and obviously we all have our own different love languages. For me, physical touch was really, really big, and I'm not talking about sexual touch. I'm just talking about physical affection as well, especially because when you grow up poor and in poverty, I wasn't able to give gifts or receive gifts. We didn't have no money. Acts of service were another great one. Words of affirmation, but I think that that physical touch, especially as a young man, was really important to be hugged, to be, you know what I mean? It really helped increase my self-esteem, made me feel good. And so it's interesting too when you're dating, if people have different love languages and you're not compatible, it's so hard to get to that second date, right?
I don't know, it's hard to say. I feel like I like
All
those things.
Yeah.
Right?
But if I had to pick top 2, yeah.
Spending time and acts of service.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, physical touch is so important. Like, I'm such a cuddler.
Are you a
I'm
cuddler?
like so like all up in my boyfriend all the time. You know, and I just love it.
I'm literally getting jealous. Oh, so we should move on to the next question.
Yeah, so the next question, what are some red flags in relationships?
If someone is insecure or possessive, for
Yeah.
sure, I'm like, get out now. I'm
Ding,
like,
ding, ding, ding,
you know,
right?
you don't want to be with someone that makes you feel less than what you are, or makes you want to be less than what you are, to make them feel more of a better man, I guess, or a better woman, or whoever you're dating. I think that you should be with someone that is secure and that is proud to be with you, and someone that doesn't want to hold you back from your dreams. You know, be with someone who wants you to be the best version of yourself and help you excel and always want you to be happy. You know, that's the type of people you should be with and surround yourself with in life in general, you know?
Yeah.
Have you ever doubted yourself when you were pursuing your dreams and when you were at Miss Universe or at The Amazing Race or any, like, have you ever had like those moments of doubt, and how did you fight through them?
For sure. I've had moments like that a lot, you know, because everything I do is like extremely critical and extremely judgmental.
Yep.
It's such a hard industry to be in, and you know, I doubted myself in pageants because I wasn't the typical pageant girl they were looking for. I would always be the only Indigenous girl. And it was hard because I wasn't like trained like everyone else. I wasn't bred to do pageants and started them really young. And how did I stop doubting myself? Well, I realized, you know, I belong wherever I want to belong. And if I want to be there, that's where I belong. And I realized, you know, like I can do everything else everyone else can do. You know, I can do everything anyone else can do. So I'm like, why hold myself back? And I'm like, and then that's when I got that mentality, you know, that why not? Why can't I do it? And I always say that to my mom too, you know, when she's pursuing things. I'm like, Mom, why not?
Why not?
Go
right?
for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that gave me some goosebumps because I remember I watch all these motivational things in the morning, and there was an NBA player, and he won the MVP, and they asked him, you know, like, how do you feel? And he said, why not? Why can't I be the best player in the NBA? Why not? And now you're saying like the why not? It just gave me like goosebumps. It's, you know, so
Yeah, that's super relatable. Why not? I think it's really important, like, you know, and because you take up spaces where Indigenous people haven't ever really gone before. So I think that's really important to be like, why not? I'm going to be the first person to make space for our people here and just pave that way.
I'm still trying to convince her to run for prime minister a little bit later.
So our next question is going to be, who do you go to for relationship advice?
My mom.
I had a feeling you were going to say mom.
She's super brutally honest. Like, brutally honest, but I'm glad she's that way. I mean, your best friends are always going to tell you the truth. So I tell my sister things, but my mom is like the one that's really honest. Right from the get-go. She's like, nope, don't like him.
Don't
Hate him.
like him.
You know?
Get rid of him.
You know, and she's like, not good for you. She knows me best, and so does my sister. So they both have really good advice. But yeah, my mom will just tell me right away if they're good or not. It's like she's just got like a loser detector. She's like, no, it's a loser.
That one's a no good.
No. Yeah, she's she's had her fair share of dating, and she gives me great advice. And I have like a great dad to look up to, and if I'm gonna date someone, it's gonna be like someone similar to my dad. Like, hope it doesn't sound weird, but like I mean, same kind of like values, and someone that makes me feel as comfortable as he does, and he just keeps me calm, but he makes me laugh all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm dating someone kind of like that right now.
and so I always find that really interesting too, because I talk about because I really love psychology and sociology, and one of the things that I always really emphasize is the importance for fathers' relationships with their daughters and with their sons too, because your father, in my opinion, is the man that shows you what love is without sex. And when I say that, this is a figure who wants to be around you, who wants to support you, who has no other hidden agenda other than to support you. And so I find if you have that positive male father figure in your life, you're less likely to be in a relationship with someone who just wants sex.
Mm-hmm.
And because you know what that genuine love and respect feels like, right? And even for young men, that's the man who teaches you how to respect women and teaches you how to respect yourself, right? And so, and I see if we don't have, a lot of times if you don't have that father figure, some of our young ladies and some of our young men may get lost looking for this misconception that sex and love are the same thing, and they're not, right?
That's very true.
And so I think when you talked about, and you said, oh, that sounds creepy, but I think if you have a healthy father, why wouldn't you want somebody like the man who you're most proud of, right?
Yeah.
And
my
same
dad
thing.
Is the coolest.
What place did you guys come in, by the way, on the Amazing Race?
We came in third.
That's not bad. That's
that
not
was
bad at all.
The coolest things I've ever done. Like
Alright.
with my dad. Like I that on that race, me and my dad like created this bond that was like even stronger than ever, and I got to see what he was made of, and it was crazy. And I was like, wow. I was like, my dad's actually super cool.
No,
like
he is.
he's like, I always thought he was cool, but he was like super dad jokes kind of guy, like funny. But
Do you find your parents have corny jokes? My parents have
for
the
sure.
corniest
But sometimes
jokes.
they got the best jokes. Like my family laughs a lot. Sometimes we just laugh really hard, make really rank jokes. So,
Oh, do you guys?
yeah, we got like some rank native humor. I love it.
Me too. So what to you is the difference between arrogance and confidence? And how do you walk that line?
Well, I think with arrogance, you're just kind of like, you're overconfident and you're a jerk and you rub it in people's faces.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like arrogance is like, trying to show off and showing people like how awesome you are. And then with confidence, it's like, you don't have to rub it in anyone's face. You just are who you are and you're proud of it. You don't need to tell people like, oh, I'm the best, I'm this and that. It'd be like, if you're great or doing well at something, you don't have to flaunt it in everyone's faces. You could just be confident in yourself and feel good about yourself. And I feel like people who are arrogant, I think there is a little bit of insecurity in there where they
for sure,
because they need to flaunt it out there, and they need like
validation,
external
validation,
to say something, and then they're jerks about it, and then it's not even confidence, it is just arrogance. You're like, okay, you think you're awesome, whatever. I'm like, but you don't have to be rude about it. You know what I mean?
And it's arrogance is just the mask of insecurity.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's so many underlying insecurities in there for someone to be that way. Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end of the episode. If you have one message that you want to send to Indigenous youth right now, what would be the message on self-love and self-confidence?
I think that, what I mentioned earlier, self-love is, appreciating yourself for the way you were created. And I think that's the one thing that's going to push you to be who you're meant to be. I think that if you appreciate yourself for the way you are, flaws and all, sometimes your flaws are the greatest part of you.
Right.
And, I think that you should really live your life fearlessly and without limits. I feel like you should never set limits for yourself. You should always think, you know, that why not mentality. And I think that if they live like that, where, you know, they love themselves, they appreciate themselves, and even if they're not culturally in tune, or they are, I think that it's important to learn about your background and your identity, because there is a strength with it. Like, that's what basically saved my life. And I feel that because, you know, I love myself, I love my culture, and I love that I live a life without limits, because who knows where I can go, and who knows, like, what people I can reach, whose life I could change. And I think that they should think like that, because if there's always someone watching. People don't realize that there's always someone watching you. You don't have to be doing all these things that I'm doing in order to be a role model. You can be anyone. And I think that the youth don't realize that there are other people looking at them, looking up to them. They could be younger or older, and they could be setting an example. And I think that example creates a ripple effect, and then someone else will feel that way. Like, for example, you see someone that's feeling empowered and strong. You're like, I want to feel like that. I want to do those things. I want to be like that. But I think that if you love yourself, live life without limits, and you're fearless as hell, and you think about who's watching you and what example you're setting, I think that you'll create a better path for everyone else who's looking at you.
Well,
Yeah.
you certainly have touched the soul of the Indigenous youth today at the Native Canadian Centre of Toronto, and in particular the Anegbi Youth Program. And so I want to thank you for being a part of the Sunday night Indigenous Sex and Love show. We are
Thanks
so
for
grateful
having
to
me.
have you, and we look forward to continuing to do future stuff with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Hey,
Thanks.
bye everyone.
Bye. Thanks for